Welcome to Crossed Rifle Outdoors. I'm making this video on behalf of a good friend of mine named Al. Al just recently got into reloading due to ammo availability and wanting to be able to produce his own high quality ammunition. I've had to go over die setup with Al multiple times, and with more and more people getting into the reloading with times the way that they are, it's great to have a video like this. Today we're going to be setting up 40 Smith & Wesson dies, Hornady custom grade new dimension. Some of the items you're going to need: we need the lock and load bushings because we are loading with a Hornady lock and load press. The bushings are threaded to accept the dies and make for quick interchangeability when you're doing small reloads or you are switching from different cartridges. You'll also need some case lube. I prefer the Hornady one-shot case lube. You may need a 3/4 inch box end wrench, a 1/2 inch box end wrench. You'll need a Allen or Allen driver. All of your dies come with an Allen wrench, the appropriate size, but I prefer the screwdriver setup. You're going to need a set of calipers, a reloading manual, the bullet type you're planning on loading for because you set your dies to the bullet type. So let's get started. First we're going to need the shell holder. The shell holder size is indicated on the shell holder. It's set for a variety of cartridges that the manufacturer specifies. Just because a Hornady number 10 will do 40 Smith & Wesson does not mean an RCBS number 10 will be set for that cartridge. It is set specifically to the manufacturer. So the first thing we're going to do after we put in our shell holders, we're going to put in our die bushing and lock it in. And we're going to start with the Prime Resize Die. So the best way to start is we're going to raise the ram all the way up, and we're going to screw our die in until it touches the shell holder. Now once we touch the shell holder, I'm going to lower my ram. I'm going to turn my die just about 1/4 of a turn until I get the slight cam over. Once I've established that, I'm going to tighten my locking ring to the bushing. Those of you doing this on an RCBS press, Lyman, Franklin Arsenal, all of those types of other presses that are threaded, just do it tight to your press, and we're going to snug down the lock ring. So now that we have the depth set, we need to set our decapping pin. We have this spindle here. Screwing it clockwise sends it down, counterclockwise brings it up. I like to set mine as a starting point at right about 1/4 of an inch outside of my die. So let's go ahead and get that setted. And notice as I'm turning the locking ring, it's turning my spindle as well, so we do need to be conscious of that. And you can go to Walmart and pick up these little Rubbermaid totes. I picked this one up several years ago that I use for lubing my casings, and as you can tell, we've got a couple of 40 Smith & Wesson casings. It doesn't take much, a little lube. It really does go a long ways. And according to the manufacturer, you're supposed to let your case lube dry. I haven't ran into any issues with it using it wet. One issue you may run into on bottleneck rifle cartridges is that you'll get hydrostatic pressure dents on the casings. That's far and few in between for me. So now that we have it roughly set, we're going to make sure that our decapping pin is set. Right there looks pretty good. It popped the primer. You'll find that about only half of them end up in the primer catch tray. So I've kept the lid to the box of my press and throw that on the floor to catch anything that doesn't go in, just to make sure my wife does not get mad at me for vacuuming up spent primers. We're going to go through, we're going to do about half a dozen, give us some to work with in our setup. And you may find that when you're picking up range brass, ordering once fired brass, that you might have to adjust your decapping pin in order to push it out. Just, it has more to do with, see here we have one. It's a different brand of casing, and we didn't come all the way out. So that shows us we need to adjust our spindle downwards just a little bit. And again, a little bit goes a long ways. So this is where our 3/4 inch comes in handy. We can loosen that. We're going to screw our spindle down. We're going to snug it up. Let's see if we moved it enough. There we have it. We pop that primer. Okay, now that we have a few of the casings ready for us, we're going to pop this die out. We're going to move to the bell die. The term gets thrown around, bell, flaring. I just brought up using the term bell, so that's the term I'm going to use. We're going to inset our next bushing. And those of you that want to save even more money, you can get one bushing for your dies and just leave it in the press. I'm not that patient of an individual, so I like to have one for each die. So what I like to do is I'm going to put a shell on, raise our ram, and we're going to start screwing our die in until we fill the flare. Now we're touching the casing. So I'm going to lower the press, and I'm going to give it a good rotation and a quarter, and then I'm just going to kind of snug up my lock ring, and that's where I like to start my bell. When you go down, you won't really feel very much resistance, if any at all. So here we're starting our flare, and we're just barely starting to get our bullet in. So we're going to need to give it probably another half rotation down. As we go down, we'll be able to feel more and more resistance. If you go down too much, you're going to be backpedaling and destroying brass, so just go a little bit at a time. Reloading takes patience, so if you're a very impatient person, this can be not your cup of tea. So we'll give it another half of a rotation down. And again, we're not quite where we need to be. So we're going to give it, we'll give this one right about 3/4 of a turn. We're still making progress in the right direction, but we're not there yet. Give another 3/4 of a turn. Now you should be able to visually see the flare on the casing. And I'm different. I like a lot of flare on mine. When we go through and set up the crimp and on the bullet seating die, all that'll come back in, and that gives us less risk of crinkling or bulging our casing further down, causing issues later. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to tighten up the lock ring on our bell die, and then we'll go forward onto our crimp and seating die. Again, we repeat the steps. We go ahead and put in our bushing and screw in our die. And I'm just going to get that started. I like to bring my casing up and turn the die down until I feel it touch the mouth of the casing, which is right about there. We're going to back it off. We're going to sit a bullet in, and we're going to put our lock ring down to kind of keep our crimp in place. We don't want it crimping while we're setting our seating depth, so we can set the bullet depth on the same cartridge multiple times, and then we won't have to pull bullets later. So we're going to come up, and we're going to turn our seating stem down until we feel it hit the bullet, which is right about there. Now right about there definitely doesn't put us to length. According to the Hornady manual, we're looking for a cartridge overall length of 1.25 inches. This is where our calipers come in. I know I have the Pittsburgh ones. I'm no precision match shooter, nothing like that. These will get you right about where you need to go. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to adjust the die seating depth just about 3/4 of a turn and see where that gets us. And again, we're going to start with a lot of slow movements. Right here we're at 1.244. We're in the ballpark, and we're just going to slowly keep working the bullet down until we get it to where we want, and then we'll work on setting our crimp. 1.227. .2115. 1.196. Give it just a small turn, about 1/4 of a turn. 1.192. Give it another 1/4 of a turn. 1.8. We're going to go ahead and we're going to give it about 1/2 of a turn. 1.169. Let's go ahead and give it another 1/2 of a turn. 1.15. We'll go another 1/2 turn. Now we're looking like we're starting to get in the ballpark. 1.39. So we're going to give it 1/4 of a turn on the seating stem. .135. Give it another 1/4 turn. 1.128. So now that we're right in the ballpark of what we're shooting for, we're going to turn our entire die just about 1/4 turn to get our crimp in. You don't want an overly tight crimp. You're on the risk of bulging your casings. It can cause pressure spikes. So we're going to go ahead and seat this bullet. Now it might be harder for you guys to see, but we still have part of our bell on this, and we didn't get a real solid crimp. and we're at 1.22. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to back the seating stem up just about a quarter turn, and we're going to bell a couple more casings. And it usually will take you a few casings to figure it out if you've got it right where it needs to be, or if you need to make different adjustments. So we're going to go ahead and screw the whole die down just a little bit more, probably another quarter turn. We're going to back the seating stem off just a little bit more, about an eighth of a rotation. So now we're here, and our bell is starting to get a little bit tighter and actually starting to crimp. If we look at our seating depth, we're at 1.125, the book's recommended cartridge overall length. So we're going to go ahead and move to this new shell, and we're going to screw our die down a little bit more, and we're going to back our seating stem off just a little bit more. We're still having some flare around the neck. We're at 1.124. So again, we're going to screw our die down and our seating stem up. Now we're starting to get an actual crimp forming around the edge of the bullet, which is going to be a little harder for you guys to see on camera, but you'll be able to see it with your naked eye. We're a little bit on the long side. We're at 1.134. So we're going to just screw the die body, all of it down. We're going to go ahead and we're going to give it right about another quarter turn. And there we've gone past the cartridge recommended overall length. We're at 1.122. So we're going to back this off and give it full rotation, and we'll give it a full rotation down. We're not seeing the crimp quite what I'm looking for as fast, so I'm going to try and speed this up. It's already been kind of a longer video. We're at 1.132. So I'm going to back the seating stem off just a little bit and screw our die down just a little bit more. We're at 1.1295. We're going to screw our die down another quarter turn. We're going to back our seating stem up about a quarter of a turn. We're at 1.126. And we're still not seeing the crimp that I'm looking for, so we still need to keep adjusting the die body. We're going to go a little more generous on bringing down the die and raising the seating stem. Here I'm now starting to see the crimp along the lines of what I'm looking for. So we're going to turn our die down again and bring our seating stem up again. And now that I have the die down, and I don't have it up all the way, I'm feeling a lot of resistance. So instead of destroying the casing, that tells me I've got my crimp too heavy. So I'm going to back it off a quarter of a turn and try it again. Here I'm feeling too much crimp. So I'm going to back it off just a little bit more. Feeling too much resistance, so I'm going to back it off another quarter turn. And right here, where you can hear it kind of cam over, should give us just a beautiful crimp. Now you see a lot of the factory ammunition that has the ring around a bullet. The term for the ring around the bullet is a cannular, and they'll actually do a very heavy roll crimp into the cannular. These bullets do not have cannulars on them. So by doing that deep of a crimp, you're really digging in to the bullet itself, and it can actually leave a permanent ring in the copper and the lead. So we want to try and avoid that to help keep bullets' consistency and pressure spikes down. So let's go ahead and pull a measurement on this. We're at 1.1265. So the crimp is about where we want it, and the seating depth is about where we want it. So we're just going to give it, the seating stem, a slight turn down. And we're at 1.126. And you always have variations in your cartridge overall length from brass to brass and bullet to bullet. It's just the nature of how the ammunition is. So you're allowed tolerances. We're looking for 1.125. So if we were 1.124, 1.126, we're right in that range where we shouldn't really need to worry. But we're going to set this for perfection. We're going to get this guy right at 1.125. We're right about there. We're half of a thousandth off. So we're just going to give it the tiniest of turns, and we're going to seat our bullet. We might have gone too far. There we go. 1.126. And again, cheap calipers will give you slight variations, and we're not making very big adjustments by any means. We're sitting at 1.125. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tighten up our lock ring. Grab another bullet out of our box and bags. We'll see if we can get these two to seat. Now these bolts are giving us a little bit longer of a length. .15. So we're going to make sure that I didn't twist anything when I was tightening the ring, which is very doable. 1.144. .121. We're going to back this off just a little bit. Alright, we're right where we need to be. So the firearm we're loading for is a Springfield XDM. And we're going to go ahead and ensure the weapon is clear. And we're going to drop it in the chamber. And we're done. That is how you set up your pistol dies.